Hey guys, today I'm going to be doing a video on some recommendations for short books that really pack a punch. And I was thinking about this topic because I had left a comment on Jen from Remembered Reads, her video. I'll have her channel linked down below. I've been really enjoying her channel, and I had said a comment about how it was a short book but that it really packed a punch, and so that kind of stuck with me. And I have several recommendations here from different genres and different styles of books, and they're all pretty short, but they're all books that I really enjoyed, and so I thought that I'd talk about them with you guys. The first one that I have here is Animal Farm by George Orwell. I read this in, I think, 6th grade, but I had completely forgotten about it. And I reread it recently, I think it was last year, and I really enjoyed it. This is kind of a fable slash satire set on a farm, and the animals are kind of divided, and it kind of represents the state at the time of like communism and a bunch of different things that Orwell was trying to communicate. And when you read it, you really start to realize what he's trying to do. But it's not really obvious. You really have to look for it. And when I was in 6th grade, I completely missed it. It went over my head. So that's why I kind of recommend people to pick it up and kind of see what it's all about. So yeah, I highly recommend this one. I recommend all of these, but that one in particular is just so short that it definitely deserves to at least be tried, you know? The next one I have here is one of my favorites, and that's We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is a beautiful edition that I have here. I just love this edition so much. So this book is very dark and gritty, and it has kind of like a very satisfying twist. This is about an unreliable narrator, and most of her family is dead, and as you go along with the story, kind of trying to figure out what happened. And so definitely a book that I feel is really underrated. I don't really hear a lot of people talk about it, but when people do read it, they end up really liking it. So I definitely think that if you're into unreliable narrators, twists, and you know, something really unique, then I recommend you pick this one up for sure. Next I have a classic, and this is Persuasion by Jane Austen. I am always talking about this book. I've read all of Jane Austen's novels, and this one is still my favorite. It's just, I don't know, I really do identify with Anne, and I definitely appreciate the relationship or slash love story in this book. I'm not really going to go too much into this book because I feel like a lot of people know what it's about. I just don't see a lot of people picking it up, you know, as often as Sense and Sensibility and Pride and Prejudice, but I definitely do think it's worth a read. So if you're into Jane Austen at all or Victorian lit, then I do recommend you pick it up. It's the shortest Jane Austen, and it still has kind of her style. It's just a different type of story for her. This book doesn't read like any of the others, and I think that's why I like it so much. Next I have The Hours by Michael Cunningham. I absolutely loved this book. This is the story of 3 women, all who are either directly influenced or have something to do with Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf. One of the women is Virginia Woolf, and it kind of goes into 3 different time periods, 3 different settings, and takes us through kind of their lives and how they're affected by this book. I highly recommend that you pick this up if you're into literary fiction, you know, different points of view. If you're into any sort of stories where there's like a subtle undercurrent of despair, then I definitely think you should pick it up. I really want to read more by Michael Cunningham because of this book. I do recommend that if you do pick it up, that you don't really do a lot of research on it, because I do think it would take away from kind of the journey that you go into when you read this book. Next I have Chronicle of a Death Foretold by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. This is like one of the shortest books in this pile, and it's basically a story that opens with someone's death, and then it kind of rewinds the story for you from the beginning and kind of takes you through what ended up happening to this person and why they died. This is definitely a really short book by Marquez that really still has his style and his humor and just, you know, his play with language. You still get all of that in this book without having to commit to like a really long book. However, if you do enjoy this book, then you definitely will enjoy Marquez and his other novels, because I can definitely see him in this and in his other books. They're just a lot longer and more complex. So this was a joy to read. This was, you know, yet another book by Marquez that I really loved. Next, I have a memoir, and that is Girl Interrupted by Susanna Kazin. And a lot of people are familiar with the movie. Even if you watch the movie, I still think that it's worth checking this out. It's definitely similar to the movie at times, but very different at other times. And there's also a lot of like cool documents that she's like scanned into the book. So like this, for example, is like a note from a doctor. She also talks a lot about bipolar personality disorder and how psychologists at the time described it and what it truly is. She talks about all of that in this book, but it's still short. You know, you're not going to be bogged down by a lot of facts about psychology or anything. It ties into the story pretty well, and I just thought it was a very interesting journey. It's crazy the things that she went through and the things that the other girls went through, but that was really common at the time. So I think it's an important read and one that's still fun to read, even though, you know, what you're reading about is not really so much fun. And last, I have a book that a lot of people have talked about and raved about and enjoyed, and that's The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro. I was debating whether I should include this one or Never Let Me Go, which is another popular novel of his, but when I compared the two, this is the one that I enjoyed the most, so that's the one that I'm going to recommend. This is really about a butler who is going on a trip, and as he's going on this trip, he's telling you about his life and how he became a butler and the family that he served and all the different things that happened in that family. This is a really subtle story. You know, at the surface, it's just a butler named Stevens telling you about the family he served, but you can see that he is a very doubtful servant, and you kind of can't help but feel for him and feel a connection to him, the way that he describes things. He's a true gentleman, and the way that he describes things is, you know, like a butler would, you know, someone that has seen a lot of things happen, but is very diplomatic in the way that they're explaining it. That's kind of how this reads, so I thought it was really unique. So I definitely want to check out more of his writing, and I'll be keeping an eye on, you know, the other books that he publishes. But definitely this is one that I recommend. I do believe it deserves all of the hype that it gets. So those are all of the books that I recommend. They're all very short, but they all pack a punch, and they're kind of a mixed bag in terms of genres, so I hope there's something in there that interests you. Let me know down in the comments if you have any recommendations for some short reads that you think are very entertaining or you think that I would enjoy. I would love to hear about them. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!